All right, you guys, happy Wednesday, and we're right on time. Last week, we discussed Greg Sharzevsky, the Jersey College owner and chancellor, in his podcast and what he had to say through an interview with Higher Ed. While Jersey College tells the public one story and argues another in court, and describes my experience as a narrative, national reporting like Time magazine is bringing a much larger issue into focus about the so-called nursing shortage. Greg Sharzevsky says Jersey College basically exists because America needs nurses. Time says America's nursing shortage keeps getting worse. My question is simple. When a student completes her nursing education, should an internal prediction about whether she might pass the licensing exam be allowed to stop her from ever taking it? And is that contributing to this so-called nursing shortage, and how? My case concerns a barrier for licensure. So, in my view, I completed the coursework, the clinical requirements, the board requirements, but I was prevented from getting that degree and that ATT, that verification to the Board of Nursing to sit for the NCLEX to get my license because of an internal exit examination requirement. That isn't listed on my transcript. That wasn't a course. I think that creates a striking but nuanced question for viewers and others in my position. While Time essentially argues that the national system is pouring resources into a pipeline that leaks after nurses enter the workforce, my experience raises a different pipeline question. What happens when a nursing school stops a student before she can even reach that licensing exam? I'm not saying that Time supports my individual claim. I think it means my case adds another layer to that pipeline debate. Time says the pipeline is not necessarily empty, that it's leaking. My story asks whether institutions also create barriers inside that pipeline before qualified students ever receive the opportunity to take the national licensing examination. Or in other words, are they poking holes in it? Instead of patching that leak, are they making it worse? For years, I have said that this is bigger than one student, and I meant that. Now, the national conversation is asking questions about the nursing pipeline, institutional barriers, working conditions, and who benefits from calling all of this a simple nursing shortage. Welcome back to the Nursing Investigation. If you're just tuning in, here's my case in 1 minute or less. I attended Jersey College. I completed the classes in clinical education required in my program and through the state. I paid approximately $30,000 for a degree I couldn't earn, according to the record. Think about that. A completed nursing education, meeting the board requirements for hours, practicums, clinicals, all that time, all those life changes, everything you put in, all that free labor, means nothing? How degrading to nurses everywhere. Since I was not awarded my degree on paper, they withheld my ATT, and I was not permitted to move forward for that NCLEX because I did not satisfy a high enough benchmark of the internal predictive exit exam requirement. And I think that distinction matters. The NCLEX is the licensing examination to prove competency, to say, hey, you can go work as a nurse. Without ever sitting for it, how can anybody prove my competency? The examination that stopped me came before that licensing examination, which is the whole point of the NCLEX, to determine one's competency and right to go to work. According to the trial court's factual history, I completed the necessary coursework, credits, clinical hours, but Jersey College withheld that diploma after the exit examination. Now, I find it interesting what we talked about last week, Greg Sharzevsky's public message
Students are not just going to be a number at Jersey College. Just work hard and respect the people that put their heart and soul into your organization, whether it's an educational institution or any institution. Just make sure you take care of your people. Looking in the mirror and not being afraid of what the mirror reflects.
Ultimately, throughout the interview, I keep hearing phrases like, students are just not going to be another number. Help them cross the finish line. Looking in the mirror and not being afraid of what the mirror reflects. Take care of your people. We're going to put them on our shoulders. I see the president describing the school as a part of a solution to America's nursing shortage, a pipeline designed to support students, meet them where they are, and carry them across that finish line. But I was one of those students who experienced that program in reality. I'm also in court with Jersey College. And this is the courtroom message I perceive. In their last appellate filing, their reply brief, they start out with a specific sentence that I've never seen before in any filed case. Price spends much of her opposition seeking sympathy. She spins a narrative, despite portraying herself as an unsophisticated victim even. I have a question. How can someone be considered sophisticated enough to knowingly waive constitutional rights through a legal arbitration agreement when push comes to shove and her future is put on the line to test that contract with no legal education or enough time to review to understand it in full, yet supposedly not capable or qualified enough of attempting her NCLEX after completing the required nursing education? They go on to say further, like countless of other students, fails out, refuses to remediate, the degree she could not earn. What a slap in the face to nurses everywhere. To say one's nursing education is something that I did not earn. None of it matters. All that matters is that exit exam that is gonna allow you to take your NCLEX or not. So what was the point of going through board approved education and a curriculum if none of that got me to NCLEX? The public language is support in this interview, but the courtroom language is equal to blame. They choose seeking sympathy as an opening line in their appellate reply. Not the arbitration clause, not the legal standard, but a characterization of me. They are entitled to make their legal arguments, but I'm also entitled to show the public exactly how those arguments were framed. If you have not gone back and watched that interview with Greg Sharzevsky as he's talking about Jersey College, I advise you do so. Draw your own conclusion, because what I got from it was support, mentorship, getting you across that finish line. But when I go back and compare it to the court messaging, I see she's looking to get sympathy. This is her narrative. She's a failure. That's what it looks like to me. Now, what did Time actually report? The article addresses the national nursing workforce. Time challenges one of those central ideas repeated throughout the nursing industry, that America's primary problem is simply we do not produce enough nurses. Now let's check back in with Greg Sharzevsky's interview. The title of this episode is Building Jersey College to Address the Nursing Shortage with Greg Sharzevsky. Interesting. Because the article reports that approximately 280,000 people passed the RN or practical NCLEX in 2025, about 34% more than in 2016. It also reports that roughly 7 million people held an active RN or practical nurse license, compared with approximately 3.4 million RN jobs and 651,000 practical nurse jobs in 2024. I don't think Time's argument is not that the nursing crisis is imaginary. I think the argument is the crisis may be less, about producing licensed nurses and more about retaining those nurses in bedside positions under difficult working conditions. And to my own point, retaining qualified nurses after they've completed their required education. So let's get back to that leaky pipeline. When I go back to Greg Sharzevsky's interview, it starts out very simple. She says, "Hi Greg, welcome. It's great to have you on the show. How's it going?" He says, "It's going great. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me." She says, "I am so excited to hear about your origin story of Jersey College and the amazing work you're doing in addressing the nursing shortage." But when I go back to the Time magazine, I see one expert quoted in the article. It compares the situation to a leaking gas tank. The country keeps pouring resources into producing nurses, but many nurses leave the bedside because of staffing levels, burnt out, administrative pressure, and working conditions. Time says the pipeline may not be empty, and then you have students like me that come into play, who are blocked from even entering the field. My story raises different pipeline of questions, like what happens when a nursing institution stops a student inside that pipeline before she can even reach the national licensing examination? Jersey College describes my outcome as an individual failure, someone who could not earn that degree, while I contend that an institutional exam prevented me from even graduating and attempting the NCLEX. Time's question is simple. Why are licensed nurses leaving? My question is, who is prevented from becoming licensed in the first place and driving them away after they do? I think they both go hand in hand. I think the idea of how much nurses are pushed around is mind-boggling. And this is why the term gets thrown around. Nurses are underpaid and undervalued. When I go back to Greg's interview again, I think about that pipeline claim. He says, just like it's hard to find nurses now, there was a nursing shortage then, just like there's a nursing shortage now. Greg Sharzevsky presents Jersey College as a response to the nursing shortage. Educate more students, produce more graduates, and strengthening the nursing pipeline. But in my experience, are you even actually doing that when you have prevented a great hand of students from even getting to their NCLEX? Is your goal really to help the nursing shortage and whatever that means to you? What are you actually doing, and why are you doing that? Time offers a compelling analysis, I think, nationally. It reports that millions of people already hold active nursing license and argues that the deeper problem may be retention, working conditions, and nurses leaving that bedside care. And when I think about my own story and I hear the word retention, I'm like, okay, these students all made it to the end, but they weren't allowed to take their NCLEX. When I think about working conditions, I think about the educational conditions, being a student through these programs and what that looks like to make it to the very end, pay all your tuition, do everything you needed to do, but an exit exam dictates your entire future, a predictability. And then nurses leaving bedside care. How about nurses leaving the industry as a whole because they can't even get into it? I don't think time proves Greg is wrong. And it certainly does not prove that he was dishonest in any manner. But I think it challenges the assumption that simply producing more nursing students solves the nursing crisis. What it looks like to me that Greg is saying is he's strengthening that pipeline. Time, on the other hand, is talking about repairing the conditions that's causing the pipeline leak. There was one quote specifically in the Time magazine I took a notice to. It's one reason Lassiter, the nursing professor, says the best solution for getting more nurses to stay at hospitals is to mandate nurse to patient ratios by legislations. It works, she says. So if we need legislation to keep people employed, then we need a legislation to get people that earned their degrees help. We need to hold schools accountable for taking all their tuition, for dragging them through years of school and free labor, and not giving them their degrees, or even not sending their verification to the Board of Nursing to sit for their NCLEX. Is that how we solve this leaking pipeline? One of the leaks in that pipeline? I think time shifts the attention away from blaming individual nurses toward structural conditions. Insufficient staffing, heavier workloads, burnout, eliminated support positions, administrative pressure, and inadequate nurse to patient ratios. I actually got a comment recently from a nurse. She was like, you would think they would allow her to sit for her NCLEX so she would regret it for the rest of her life. And I thought that was interesting for her to say. In my case, Jersey College's appellate brief frames the dispute as my individual failure. Nothing about a pipeline, nothing about it leaking, just as a singular problem. How can it be so singular when people all across the country, all at these different Jersey College schools, have experienced my same experience? Their words include fail out, refuses to remediate, the degrees she could not earn. That's interesting because I didn't fail out of nursing school. I actually completed everything the board would require me to sit for my NCLEX. I didn't refuse to remediate. I refused to repay a tuition I already paid for. I refused to retake classes I already passed. Does that seem logical to you? Does that sound logical to you, having a nursing student repay and retake her entire nursing education because of an exit exam that you yourself have given the definition of competency to, when no accrediting body, no board of nursing, not the National League of Nursing, nobody has ever said that? Literally, give me the legislation, give me the regulation, give me the rule where it says an exit exam proves competency. You can't find it because if you could, it would be called NCLEX, and I think that's why you won't go there. The NCLEX determines competency. That is what it is there for. So when you're preventing me from sitting for the NCLEX to get my license, how can you ever determine my competency based on a predictability? I was told it wasn't going to rain today, and guess what? It definitely rained today. Who do you think you are? What godly powers do you think you have that you think you can predict somebody's future? And the thunder is right on time. My question is whether that language hides the institutional decisions behind what happened. Who created this requirement? Who decided that the result should prevent graduation indefinitely? And who benefited from that decision? Who benefits when a systemic problem is described as an individual failure? And I think about where he says, we help them cross the finish line. Then he goes on to say towards the end that he can sleep at night knowing what he's doing. He can sleep at night. That's amazing. Good for you, Greg. Good for you. Both Greg and Time magazine talk about supporting nurses, but Time measures support through actual, real life, realistic, real lived experiences. What I pick up from Greg's interview is what looks to me, it is my opinion, a fallacy. And that's not because of my individual situation. It's nuanced. I don't doubt that there has been good experience at Jersey College, but there has been enough bad to raise questions. Where is that support in my case? Where is that same energy in that interview in the actual court documents? What did it mean to meet students where they are when I completed my coursework and clinical requirements but could not advance to the licensing exam? I don't want you to lose accreditation. That wouldn't help me either. But I find it really funny how you can take all of this tuition and bring somebody all the way through nursing school knowing they could most definitely sit for their NCLEX if you sent their verification to the Board of Nursing, but choose to stop them. Where is that support? If you want your students to take exit exams and use them as a tool, fine. But who are you to put a number on it? Oh, you can only take it X amount of times. Why is it limited? Why not keep letting them take it? Why not keep letting them learn? Meet them halfway. Where is that energy in that situation? Who are you to say my nursing education is over? What did crossing the finish line even mean for me? Meanwhile, the institution controls whether I could approach that finish line at all. What finish line? What did I get to do? Free labor? Keep your NCLEX pass rates the way I assume you want them to be? Invest in your school? Get you financial aid? What did I do for myself in that situation? There's nothing I can do without that degree and that ATT to sit for my NCLEX. I can't get that money back. I can't get that time back, like with a snap of the fingers. You have put me in so much turmoil and wasted time and delays that you now seem to be trying to profit on in present time, using it against me. All I know is Jersey College got paid either way. So it brings me to the incentive questions. When schools care about their NCLEX pass rates, as they should, not as a measure of individual students, but as their program curriculum. How you measure that, how good it is. Shouldn't be used against the students. It's your program. You taught them. If somebody completes your program that you deem not qualified enough to take the NCLEX, I believe that raises more questions than what I'm even diving into. But, touche. I wonder, do they have graduation bonuses for getting these NCLEX pass rates? I wonder about the funding they continue to get if their doors stay open, NCLEX pass rates stay high, they keep or get accreditation from these numbers, approval from boards of nursing, increased funding and grants, the enhanced reputation and enrollment, the stronger clinical partnerships they get, or that institutional recognition. And what did the students get like me out of it? You get all of that. What did I get? A headache, a lawsuit, wasted time I can never get back. Paychecks after paychecks after paychecks, and experience and delayed education. And you can sleep at night. Good for you, Greg. Good for you. Time examines the financial and institutional incentives inside of hospitals. My case asks viewers to examine incentives inside nursing education. When a school's public reputation depends partly on licensure pass rates, what happens to students from the school who predicts they may not pass the first time? Mind you, they don't need to. And if they don't, I don't think that's an individual problem. If so many students have trouble passing the NCLEX the first time, maybe that becomes institutional. So instead of putting it on our shoulders, What happened? Wait, what did you say? You said you would put us on your shoulders, right? I just wonder, is the educational system designed only to prepare students for NCLEX? Prepare them to be nurses? Or can it also become a system that screens certain students out before the public licensing authority ever evaluates them? That's my question. Time doesn't answer it, but its article does reevaluate the structural problems that I didn't see before. Maybe it's not the end result that's the problem, but it's the system, it's the leak. It's how it's created, it's how it was built, it's that structure, it's that integrity that it's missing. Time magazine doesn't accuse nursing schools of manipulating pass rates, but this is my question. I wonder if we had more nurses, more support, more union, more regulations that didn't act as what critics argue could be seen as a pyramid scheme, would it help? You know, I just wonder at one point, once you have enough money, resources, connections, once you have everything in life, for example, the president of an institution or a chain school, or the president and CEO of a hospital, right? You're well off, you're good for generations, right? Your accomplishments are done, right? You're at the top, whatever that means to you. What happens to all those people under you where you couldn't have got to where you were without those people? What happens to them? What happens when you start to walk on people like me who have only grew and supported your business and have tried to do the right thing and handle things in privacy and secretly and stay silent and show up day after day and take the brunt of everything? What happens to us? For years, I was told that it was my failure. It was my fault. I was convinced. I was gaslighted into thinking, you can't do this. Who do you think you are? But it's interesting, in the reality of it, in real life, no lawyer, no healthcare worker, no patient has ever told me that. And nobody has ever cared about an exit exam, or my grades, or if I passed the NCLEX the first time. I think Jersey College's brief frames it in that way. It was my failure, my wrongdoing. And I think that's where those exit exam attempts come into play, to make it look like it was my failure. That is what it looks like to me. But when you go through the details and I explain how it unfolded, I think it tells a different story. Now, the court record, changes in nursing education, the institution's public messaging, and the national conversation starting to take place tell a more complicated story. Greg says Jersey College is building the nursing pipeline. Time says the pipeline may not be the central problem, may be leaking because institutions are failing to retain nurses. And my experience asks, what happens when a nursing institution blocks somebody inside that pipeline before she can even take that licensing exam? So no, Time did not tell my story individually. I'm telling my story alongside Time magazine, bringing real life situations to the light just as they did. I think Time's reporting helps show why the public should listen. If you haven't already, watch Greg's interview, read the Time magazine article. Time magazine says 7 million nurses, 4 million nursing jobs. why there isn't a nursing shortage. And anytime you hear me talk about a nursing shortage, I'm not saying there aren't enough nurses in the world. Oh, we're here. We're all around. I'm not saying there's not enough nursing students enrolling into school. I'm saying something is happening from keeping them from becoming licensed nurses, or once they do, preventing them from continuing to go to work. That sounds like a leak to me. So decide for yourself. If schools say their mission is solving the nursing shortage, students deserve transparency about whether their education is primarily designed to prepare them for licensure or to protect institutional outcomes and pass rate statistics. Times article, on the other hand, says retention improves when institutions create safer and more favorable working conditions. It reports research associating improved staffing with lower burnout, lower job dissatisfaction, reduced mortality, shorter hospital stays, and fewer readmissions. Did you hear me? Reduced mortality and shorter hospital stays. In the article, it notes an estimated 4,370 lives and 720 million would have been saved over 2 years had this situation been different. Both Greg and Time use the language of supporting nurses, but Time measures support through real conditions, staffing, workload, retention, and safety. They're getting to the nitty-gritty. They are diving into the structural problem and what real nurses are dealing with in everyday life. That makes me ask, what support meant at Jersey College when I completed my education but was prevented from advancing to the licensing examination and then told in an interview, "We're supportive. We'll support you." If that's what you call support, suing a student for defamation after they invested years into your company, money into your company, apparently put their whole degree on the line for your company, ended up with nothing, can't even get their license, that you wanted to retake the program and repay something, that's what you call support? How much more do you want? Like, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. This cannot be real life. People, we have to wake up. People will walk all over you until you tell them, no, you can't do that. They prey on how scared you are and how powerful they are to keep you from standing up from what's right. For an institution like Jersey College that presents themselves to be supportive, why have they fought harder and longer trying to fight me than help me get to the finish line, if that were true? Questions and comments for this week. Tulip Lover says, if Jersey College says students are not just a number, what does that support look like when a student completes the coursework but still cannot graduate or sit for the NCLEX? My question exactly, Tulip Lover. What support? Even God knows. Kenzie B says, when Greg says the school helps students cross the finish line, who decides where that finish line is? And can a predictive exam move it beyond the state's actual licensing requirements? You guys are so smart. Internet sleuths are the best. You investigate everything. You bring so much to the table. And in the general picture, I think people who are in power, people who have too much money and fame, etc., just in general, I think they get away with so much at one point and they've just screwed so many people over, it becomes normal to them. They almost think everybody's dumb and they can get away with everything, that they're so much smarter than everybody. Nobody's going to take the time to read through the lines, but we will. A lot of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever, says, if Jersey College presents itself as a solution to the nursing shortage, why would a student who completed her classes and clinical requirements be prevented from attempting the national licensing exam? Jersey College, I'll leave that one for you. Or maybe I should leave it for Congress, because at this point, C-SPAN feels right. Nurse Mom Love 3 says, Greg says leaders should look in the mirror and learn from student feedback. That's what I heard and read too. So yeah, I'll leave that one with Greg. Brooklyn says, is Jersey College's primary goal to prepare students to take the NCLEX or to protect their college outcome, such like first-time pass rates, by screening out students predicted not to pass? So from my experience, I feel like I was weeded out because I did not score high enough on the exit exam. Because if I scored high enough on this exit exam that had given me close to the best probability, if not the best, I would be allowed to sit for my NCLEX. So the only other alternative is that. That's what I think. All right, you guys. Never let anybody tell you what to believe. Always do your own research. Always do the extra work, because something is there. If you feel something in your heart of hearts is not right, in your guts, in your tuition, it probably isn't. I don't care if you have 1 million people screaming at you, telling you the sky is purple. If you feel in your gut that it's blue, you better run to the biggest microphone you can find, the biggest platform you can find, and say that it's blue. Because I'm telling you, there are other people out there just like you who are experiencing the same thing. And it's hard for a lot of people. People get scared. People don't want to speak up. People think they're wrong. They become easily manipulated sometimes into thinking, oh, well, this person's bigger, powerful, richer, etc., more experienced, more connections. I'm scared. What more do I have to lose? This could have changed my family's future and generations to come. I think this is so much bigger than me. This could solve so many problems beyond me, in the economy, through the financial aid debt, Department of Education, like nursing in general, the healthcare system, like I'm like, I can't be the only one seeing this for what it is. I can't. Like, I almost want to shake people, be like, wake up. And if you don't care about this, you should. Because one day you're going to be in the hospital. Your family member's going to be in the hospital. And the question isn't about, are they qualified enough? If they weren't qualified enough, they wouldn't have to withhold their ATT. They would let them take their NCLEX, like me. If I was so not qualified, send my ATT to the board. I'll sit for my license and let the board decide. Let the NCLEX decide. Why won't you do that if I'm so incompetent and I'm not qualified? Let the jury decide. If you're so right and I'm so wrong, let the people decide. Because to me, this is of public interest. These are the people who are going to be sick. These are the people I'll be working with, taking care of. Let them decide. All right, guys. I'll see you next week on another episode.